The trade station floated like a giant metal city in space, orbiting a dying red dwarf star. Its lights flickered weakly, and its air smelled like rust, oil, and too many forgotten dreams. Merchants shouted over each other in dozens of alien languages. Robots rolled past with crates, while tired workers searched for cheap food or sleep. Drake Corwin stood at the edge of the busy market, counting the last few credits on his wrist chip. Just one coin left, barely enough to buy a meal. His cargo ship was low on fuel, and his stomach had been empty since yesterday. But he didn't complain. A freighter pilot learned long ago that space wasn't kind, and no one owed you anything. He turned to walk toward a food stall when he heard a soft whimper. At first, he thought it was just background noise. But then he saw her, huddled against a cold wall, shivering, her thin arms wrapped around herself. She wasn't human. Her skin was soft violet like evening sky, and her eyes were large and glowing faintly blue. She wore only a torn cloth around her shoulders. People passed by her like she was invisible. A child tugged at her hand, crying weakly. The child looked just like her, same purple skin, same glowing eyes, but even smaller and colder. Drake's heart tightened. He walked closer. "You okay?" he asked gently. The woman didn't respond at first. Then she looked up, her eyes filled with fear and sadness. She tried to speak but only coughed. They took everything," she whispered, in broken standard. "I just needed food for my son. They pushed us away." Drake glanced at the crowd. Some aliens had noticed her but walked faster to avoid her. A merchant shook his head and muttered, "Beggar species. Can't even take care of their own." Drake stepped closer, ignoring the merchant. "Here," he said. "Eat this. Wrap this around yourselves. You'll feel better." The woman looked at him like she couldn't believe what was happening. Her fingers trembled as she accepted the meal. She helped her son take the first bite, then took a small bite herself. A tear slipped from her eye. Why would you help us?" she asked. Drake shrugged. "You needed it. That's all." The child leaned against him, already sleepy from the food. Drake carefully wrapped the blanket around both of them. The woman leaned in too, exhausted. She shivered once, then grew still. "Thank you," she whispered. "My name is Kirea." Drake smiled gently. "Drake, just a pilot passing through." Suddenly a loud sound echoed through the station, an alert chime. Everyone looked up as a large screen lit up above the market. "Attention," the robotic voice said. "Warning issued. A fugitive of the destroyed Valari colony may be hiding on this station. Report any sightings. The subject is dangerous and must be detained immediately." A picture flashed on the screen. Drake's blood ran cold. It was Kirea. She didn't look dangerous. She looked like someone who had lost everything. The crowd started to stir. People looked around, murmuring. Kirea froze, her eyes locked on the screen, and her face went pale. "They're still hunting us," she said in a broken voice. Drake moved fast. He pulled the blanket up to hide her face. "Come with me," he said quickly. "You're not safe here." Kirea looked unsure. "Why help again? You don't know me." Drake didn't answer right away. He looked at the child curled up beside her. He saw his own little sister in that small, tired face, someone he couldn't save long ago. "You remind me of someone," he said simply. "I couldn't help her, but I can help you." With care, he lifted the child into his arms. Kirea stood slowly, weak but willing. They moved into the shadows of the station, away from the watchful eyes, away from the screens and scanners. Behind them, the alert kept repeating, but Drake didn't look back. He had given his last coin. But somehow his heart felt fuller than it had in years, and though Kirea was still shivering, she no longer looked alone. Drake's boots echoed quietly as he moved through the maintenance tunnels beneath the trade station. Pipes lined the walls, and dim lights flickered above. Kirea followed close behind, holding her sleepy child tight in her arms. The blanket Drake had given them was wrapped around both mother and son. It was quiet here, far from the loud market and flashing alert signs. Drake knew these old service paths. He had used them before. Once to smuggle cargo, once to escape trouble. Now he was using them to protect someone who had nothing. After half an hour of careful walking, they reached Dock 27. His old freighter, the Wayfarer, sat inside, small but sturdy, with scratches and patches from years of space travel. The cargo bay door opened with a soft hiss. "Come in," Drake said. "You'll be safe here." Kireya stepped inside, her eyes wide as she looked around. The ship wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and it didn't smell like fear. Drake showed her to a small room with a soft chair and some spare blankets. "You can rest here. I'll make something warm." Kireya sat slowly, hugging her child close. "Thank you," she said. Again, Drake nodded and walked to the ship's tiny kitchen. He made a simple hot drink. Just water, some powdered fruit, and a pinch of heat spice. He brought it back and handed it to her carefully. As she drank, color returned to her face. After a few quiet minutes, she looked up. "You still don't know who I am, do you?" Drake sat across from her. "I saw your picture on that screen. They called you a fugitive, said you were dangerous." Kireya gave a sad smile. "Do I look dangerous to you?" "No," Drake said honestly. "You look like a mother trying to survive." Kireya looked down at her child, then back at Drake. "My name is Kireya Vel. I am, or was, a bioengineer. My people, the Valari, lived on a peaceful world. We built gardens that sang, oceans that healed, and homes that breathed fresh air. We never made weapons. We believed in balance." She paused, her voice heavy. "But then the Red Claw mercenaries came. They said our world had rare minerals under the ground. We refused to sell. So, they took it. They destroyed our cities, burned our forests, took prisoners, left nothing but ash." Drake listened quietly. His hands were folded, his eyes steady. "I escaped with a few others," she continued. "But most of us didn't make it. My husband was taken during the last raid. I don't know if he's alive." She touched the child's head softly. "My son Leo is all I have left." Drake felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen war before. He had seen planets fall and people lose everything. But this felt different. This wasn't a war between armies. It was a rich group stealing from those who couldn't fight back. "I'm sorry," he said. Kireya shook her head. "You already helped more than anyone. Most species look at us and see weakness. They say, 'The Valari didn't fight, so they deserved it. But we only wanted peace.'" Drake leaned back, thinking. Silence hung in the room. The hum of the ship filled the space between them. Finally, Drake stood up. "Then we don't let them find you." Kireya looked at him, her eyes wide. "Why are you helping me, really?" Drake looked at the child, now sleeping peacefully in her lap. "I lost my little sister when I was young," he said softly. "No one helped us back then. I remember what it felt like. Being cold, hungry, and invisible." He looked back at her. "No one should feel that way. Not again. Not if I can stop it." Kireya's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak. She just nodded, holding her son tighter. Drake turned toward the cockpit. "We'll leave before morning," he said. "I know a place where you'll be safe for a while. But we'll need to move fast." As he walked away, Kireya whispered, "Thank you, Drake Corwin. You're not like the others." Drake paused. "No," he said with a small smile. "I'm just human, and sometimes that's enough." Drake Corwin moved quickly through the corridors of the space station, keeping close to the shadows. Kireya followed behind him, carrying her son, Leo, wrapped tightly in the warm blanket. The boy was quiet, but his wide eyes watched everything. The alert message was still playing on overhead screens. "Fugitive of the destroyed Valari colony may be present. Report all sightings. Reward available." It played again and again, reminding Everyone on the station that someone important wanted Kireya caught. Or worse. Drake's jaw was tight. He didn't trust anyone here, not even the station guards, especially not them. "We're going to Dock 12, he whispered to Kireya. "A friend of mine keeps a smuggler's map, shows blind spots in the security net. We'll use it to get off this station." Kireya nodded, her face pale but strong. "I trust you." They reached a hidden side door. Drake tapped a code on the panel, and the door slid open with a soft click. The room inside was dark, filled with metal crates, loose wires, and the faint smell of burned metal. "Halric," Drake called out quietly. "It's me. Need a favor." A small creature with green skin and mechanical goggles popped out from behind a crate. He was holding a strange-looking tool. "Drake?" he asked, blinking. "You bringing trouble again?" "Not trouble," Drake replied. "Just a mother and her kid. We need a way out, fast and quiet." Halric looked at Kireya, then at the child, then back at Drake. "You picked the wrong time, friend. Mercs are crawling all over this place. Word is they brought a bounty hunter bot. One of the new models." Drake frowned. "Seriously?" Halric nodded. "Yeah. The one called Razor 6. Doesn't ask questions. Just scans, locks, and fires." Kireya looked down, fear in her eyes. "We won't make it." Drake turned to her, voice calm. "We will. I promised you." Halric sighed. "All right, here's the map. This route," he pointed to a glowing line, "goes behind the loading docks. No cameras, no sensors, but you'll have to move fast." "Thanks." "Halric," Drake said, shaking his hand. "I owe you." "You already did," Halric muttered. "Now you owe me double." Drake smiled faintly and led Kireya back into the corridor. They followed the path exactly. At every turn he checked for guards. Every step was careful, quiet. But just as they neared the last hallway before the ship docks, a cold voice echoed through the tunnel. "Halt." Drake froze. A tall figure stepped from the shadows. It was Razor 6. The bounty hunter looked like a walking weapon. Steel armor, glowing red eyes, and arms that changed shape. One hand was a scanner, the other was already turning into a weapon. "Fugitive detected," the bot said. "Valari lifeform confirmed. Prepare for capture." Drake pulled out his blaster. "Back away, she's under my protection." Razor 6's head tilted. "You are not authorized." "I don't care," Drake said. "You'll have to go through me." The bot raised its weapon and fired. Drake shoved Kireya behind a wall and rolled to the side. The blast hit the floor, sending sparks flying. "Run!" he shouted to Kireya. "Get to the ship!" She hesitated for 1 second. Then she turned and ran. Drake fired back, hitting the bot in the chest. It stumbled but didn't fall. Razor 6 returned fire, forcing Drake to dive again. The tunnel shook with each blast. Drake's blaster was old, not strong enough to break through the bot's armor. He needed a better plan. He spotted a broken pipe on the wall, steam leaking out. He fired at the valve. The pipe burst, sending hot steam into the bot's face. The hatch closed behind. Them and the Wayfarer lifted off seconds later. As they left the station, Drake looked back once, then set course for the outer moons. Safe, for now. Inside the ship, Kireya sat quietly beside him in the cockpit. "You risked everything," she said. Drake looked ahead. "You and your son deserve a chance. That's worth the risk." Kireya didn't speak for a moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, tired but warm. "Thank you, Drake Corwin. I won't forget this." He nodded, eyes fixed on the stars. "Neither will I." The Wayfarer flew through open space, leaving the dangerous station far behind. The stars outside were calm and bright. Inside the ship, however, things were quiet in a different way. Drake sat in the cockpit checking the ship's systems. Fuel was low. The ship had taken a few hits during their escape and the shield generator was running at half power, but they were alive. Behind him, in the small living space, Kireya sat with her son Leo, who was now sleeping peacefully under the blanket. The soft hum of the ship seemed to calm him. Drake stood up and walked back to check on them. You okay? He asked. Kirea looked up, tired but calm. I think so. Leo is sleeping better now. He doesn't have to be afraid. For the moment. Drake nodded and leaned against the wall. We're heading to the moons of Talara. I know someone there. A rebel contact. They don't like mercs or greedy corporations. Are they safe? She asked. As safe as anyone can be these days, he replied. They hide refugees. They might help you too. Kirea looked down at her hands. You keep helping us even when you don't have to. Drake gave a small smile. That's what being human means, at least the way I see it. She was quiet for a moment, then said, You remind me of someone. My brother. He used to look after everyone, even strangers. He believed in kindness. Drake sat across from her. What happened to him? Kirea's voice was soft. He died protecting a group of children during the last attack. He gave them time to escape before the fire fell. Drake looked at her gently. I'm sorry. She nodded. There's a lot of sorrow these days, but I still have my son, and now, maybe a chance. Drake noticed something strange then. As she adjusted her sleeve, he saw a faint pattern on her arm. Glowing lines beneath the skin, like a map or a code. What's that? He asked carefully. Kirea followed his gaze and slowly pulled up her sleeve, revealing more of the glowing pattern. It pulsed gently with light like it was alive. This, she said, is part of what the mercenaries were after. She touched the pattern lightly. Before the fall, my people created a genetic memory system. We stored our culture, science, and history inside our DNA. The idea was simple. Even if we lost everything, we could rebuild it one day. Drake leaned forward. And you're carrying it? Kirea nodded. Yes. I was one of the last scientists assigned to the project. Each of us carried a different part of the whole. Most of the others are gone now. Drake was silent. He realized something important. Kirea wasn't just a refugee. She was a living key to an entire civilization. You could bring your people back, he said. Their knowledge, their way of life. Maybe, she said softly. But not alone. I need help. I need a safe place to work, and I need time. Drake stood up, thinking, then that's what will get you. Kirea looked up at him. Why does this matter so much to you? Drake paused. Because I've seen too many good things disappear. Too many voices go silent. If you have a chance to rebuild something, beautiful. I want to be part of that. She gave him a small, grateful smile. You already are. Just then, the ship's screen beeped. A message from the outer moons was coming in. Drake pressed the button. A man's face appeared on the screen, older, with sharp eyes and a serious voice. Drake Corwin, haven't seen your face in a while. Hey, Captain Rilo, Drake replied. I need a favor. Rilo raised an eyebrow. You always do. I've got someone with me. She's important, real important, and being hunted. There was a pause. Then Rilo said, Come in slow. Don't bring any heat with you. Understood, Drake said. We'll be there in a few hours. The screen went dark. Drake turned back to Kirea. You're not alone anymore. There are still people out here who will help. She nodded slowly. I believe that now. Drake's ship, the Wayfarer, landed gently near a camouflaged hangar built into the rock wall. As soon as the engines cooled, the bay doors opened and armed rebels stepped forward. They scanned the ship, weapons ready. Drake exited first, hands raised. It's just me, he called out, and 2 guests under my protection. A tall woman stepped from the crowd. Her armor was patched and her eyes sharp. Drake Corwin, she said, you always bring surprises. Good ones, I promise, he replied with a smile. He helped Kirea down the ramp, gently holding her arm as she carried her sleeping son. The rebels looked at her with quiet curiosity but did not stop her. She's Valari, Drake said. She carries something valuable, not gold, not weapons, Something more important. The rebel leader nodded. Come inside. We'll talk. The hidden base was warm and safe. Lights glowed softly in the hallways and the smell of hot food drifted from the kitchen area. Leo was soon given a warm bed and a full meal, sleeping soundly for the first time in days. In a private room, Kirea showed the rebel leader, Captain Relo, the glowing pattern under her skin. His eyes widened. You weren't lying, Drake, he said. She's carrying encoded data, maybe the last piece of a lost civilization. Kirea nodded. But I need help. The seed code must be decoded using a Valari interface. I know where one may still exist, on a derelict satellite called Kira's Station, orbiting a dead planet. Drake frowned. That station was abandoned years ago. It's unstable. I know, Kirea said. But I worked there once. We used it as a backup lab. If anything survived, I can finish the process. Captain Relo looked between them. It's risky, the mercs might be watching it. Drake stood up. Then we go quiet, just us. One ship, in and out. Relo sighed. You're brave, or foolish. Maybe both, Drake replied with a grin. Kira's station was dark and broken, hanging in space like a ghost ship. Pieces of its outer hull were missing, and lights flickered weakly inside. Drake carefully piloted the Wayfarer toward the docking ring. Inside, the air was thin and cold. The walls creaked under old pressure systems. Lights blinked slowly, and shadows moved where there should be none. I remember this place, Kirea said softly, walking ahead. My lab was down this corridor. They moved carefully, stepping over broken wires and cracked panels. Finally, they reached a sealed door. Kirea touched a hidden panel. Her skin's glowing pattern matched the scanner. The door opened. Inside was a dusty but untouched lab. Screens lined the walls. A main console stood at the center. It still has power, Kirea said with relief. She moved quickly, connecting herself to the console. The lights in her skin pulsed brighter as the system recognized her. Drake stood watch near the door, blaster ready. Kirea worked in silence, her fingers dancing across the controls. Lines of data filled the screen, memories of her people, their songs, their science, their dreams. Suddenly, a warning alarm beeped. Kirea gasped. A security beacon just activated. Someone knows we're here. Drake's eyes narrowed. Then we need to finish fast. Outside the lab, the sound of metal footsteps echoed through the station. Razor 6 was back. The bounty hunter bot had followed the signal, and now it moved through the broken station, searching, scanning. Drake turned to Kirea. Can you transfer the data? I've started the process, she said, but it needs a few minutes. Then I'll hold the door. Drake stepped out into the hallway. He raised his blaster, heart pounding. The bot appeared, eyes glowing red. You again, Drake muttered. Target identified, Razor 6 said. Eliminate interference, the bot fired. Drake rolled behind cover, returned fire, and shouted back, Buy time, just a little more. Kirea focused on the console, ignoring the noise of battle behind her. The screen blinked. Data transfer, 95%, 96%. A blast hit the lab's entrance. The wall shook. 7%, 98%. Drake fired again, hitting the bot's arm. Sparks flew. You did it, Drake said, amazed. No, she replied, her voice warm. We did it. Drake looked at her with pride. You're stronger than you think. She touched his hand. So are you. As the ship left the dead planet behind, a new hope burned between them. Quiet, but unshakable. The council ship, Virellen Hope, floated like a silver giant in the quiet of deep space. It was a neutral vessel, protected by laws and powerful peace treaties. Inside its chambers, leaders and witnesses from many worlds gathered to listen, speak, and decide. Drake Corwin stood near the tall windows, looking out at the stars. His clothes were still dusty from the last mission, and his left arm was wrapped with a bandage from the fight with Razor 6. But he was calm. Behind him, Kirea stood strong. She wore a clean, simple robe, and her glowing skin lines pulsed softly, with calm light. In her hands was the storage core containing the Valari knowledge, memories of a lost people. The chamber was large and silent. Many seats were filled by alien leaders, humans, and android delegates. Security guards watched closely, and several news drones floated above, recording every word. A calm voice spoke over the speakers. Today we hear the case of Kirea Vel of the Valari. She brings a message and evidence from a people believed lost. Kirea stepped forward, her voice steady. My name is Kirea. I am one of the last survivors of the Valari. My world was not lost to a natural disaster or war between nations. It was destroyed by greed. The Red Claw mercenaries took everything, our homes, our families, and our future. A whisper moved through the room. Some delegates looked shocked, others uneasy. Kirea continued, but we were not weak. We believed in peace. We planted our wisdom in our blood, in the hope that someone would protect it. I carry that hope now. She lifted the storage core and connected it to the main console. A glowing image appeared in the air, Valari cities, gardens, schools, and songs. It was beautiful. Some delegates stared in wonder, others watched with quiet shame. This is what was lost, Kirea said, and this is what we must protect. Then Drake stepped forward. I'm not a politician, he said. I'm a freighter pilot. I've seen how the galaxy treats people like her, like they don't matter. I saw how everyone ignored her at the station. I gave her my last coin because I knew one thing. No one should have to suffer alone. He looked around the room. This isn't just about her. It's about who we choose to be. Do we turn away from the weak? Or do we help them stand again? Moment of silence passed. Then a deep voice shouted from the back, Lies! A tall man in dark armor stepped forward. His face was cold, and his eyes sharp. It was Commander Tolan, the mercenary leader responsible for the Valari attack. You accuse my company without proof, he said. We acted under legal contract. That colony refused resource-sharing agreements. They were given warnings. Drake stepped forward. And what warning do you give when you destroy cities full of children? The commander glared. You are not the council. You have no right to speak. A judge raised her hand. We will review the evidence. Suddenly the lights flickered. A loud alarm echoed through the ship. Emergency alert, security breach, unauthorized units entering main hall. A council guard ran in. Mercenary ships just docked with the hull. They're trying to take the Valari woman by force. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward. Drones zoomed toward the exits. Tolan pulled a hidden weapon, but Drake tackled him before he could fire. Go. Drake shouted to Kirea. Get to the command tower, they'll protect you. Kirea ran, clutching the core as rebels from Alaris entered through the side gate. Captain Rilo had come, just in time. Fighting broke out in the chamber. Stun guns flashed. Smoke filled the air. But Kirea didn't stop. She reached the tower where she connected the storage core directly to the ship's master systems. The data went live. Broadcasts across the galaxy showed the truth. Videos, voice files, maps of attacks, secret contracts signed by Tolan's Marquis. Group billions of people now saw what had really happened. Council members gasped. Some stood in silence. Others called for justice. Back in the chamber, Tolan was finally held down. His weapon taken, his face pale with rage. Drake, bruised but standing, looked up at the screens showing the Valari memories. He smiled. She did it, he whispered. Kirea returned to the chamber. She was not shaking now. Her steps were steady. The council watched her with new respect. The judge spoke. The planet Alaris looked different now. Once cold and empty, it was slowly changing. Small green shoots pushed through cracked rocks. Streams of water began to flow from melting ice. The air was still thin, but fresh with hope. Kirea stood on a hill overlooking the new settlement. Children ran and played among the newly built homes. Some of the settlers were Valari, survivors of the past. Others were from many worlds, sent by the council as helpers and friends. Beside Kirea stood Drake Corwin. He watched the children laugh and run, a soft smile on his face. "Never thought I'd see this," he said quietly. Correa looked at him. "Neither did I. But you gave me a chance." Drake reached for her hand. "You gave me something too, a reason to fight." Behind them, Leo giggled as he chased a group of small animals native to the planet. His eyes shone with life, no longer filled with fear. It had been months since the council trial. Commander Tolan and his mercenaries were arrested, and the Valari were recognized as a protected species. The council gave Alaris to them, a new home, a fresh start. Inside the main hall, the leaders of the Valari community gathered. Correa spoke with passion about rebuilding their culture and technology. Drake listened proudly, feeling part of something bigger than himself. But after the meetings, when the crowd had left, Correa found Drake outside, sitting on a rock, looking at the twin moons rising in the sky. She sat beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You did more than give me your last coin," she said softly. "You gave me hope." Drake smiled. "And you gave me a future." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars blink in the night sky. The days passed and the settlement grew stronger. Fields of strange plants, a mix of Valari seeds and new species, began to cover the land. Scientists worked with engineers, creating machines that breathed and buildings that healed themselves. Drake helped with construction and taught the young ones how to pilot small ships and repair tools. It was hard work, but it felt right. One evening, as the twin moons glowed brighter, Drake found Correa resting near the riverbank. She looked peaceful, her glowing skin soft in the moonlight. He sat beside her and took her hand gently. "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. Drake looked at her, eyes clear. "I'm not going anywhere." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, Correa felt safe. The nightmares of the past no longer held her. In Drake's arms, she could sleep. Months later, as the seasons changed, the Valari community celebrated the first festival of rebirth. Lanterns floated in the sky, lighting up the night. Music from many worlds mixed together in a joyful song. Drake stood with Correa, watching the faces of friends and family, old and new. She whispered, "We did it." Drake kissed her forehead. Together. As the festival continued, Drake and Correa found a quiet moment beneath a great tree planted at the center of the settlement. The tree's leaves shimmered softly, a gift from Valari science and nature. They sat close, hands intertwined. Correa looked up at the stars. "I thought I would never see this again. A future where my son could grow without fear." Drake nodded. "Neither did I. But here we are." She smiled and rested her head on his chest. He held her close. In that moment, the galaxy seemed wide and full of promise. They had lost much, but together they found something stronger.